Teachers, what was the worst thing a substitute teacher did while you were gone? When I was a substitute, I got a lot of requested jobs because the substitute pool was poor. One such example given to me was a substitute who would just go to sleep. I barely believed it. Once I was teaching full time, I had a sub come in for a day. When I got back, my students told me that he told them to leave him alone, sat down, and went to sleep. I believed it then. I would occasionally give out starbursts to my 4th graders. B8 all the pink ones. I was a teacher's assistant while in college. The teacher and I took a week-long workshop and had a sub. The worst thing she did, not letting the kids go potty. It was in kindergarten, and she said all the kids going to bathroom were interrupting the class. One girl wet herself. School policy was, if kids under a certain age had an accident, the nurse would give them a pull-up, basically a diaper, to wear. The substitute proceeded to make fun of the girl for wear a diaper, calling her baby and such. The little girl ended facing repercussions at home too. It was devastating to hear about. I came back after being gone one day and my students told me the substitute teacher flipped over tables in a rage and was escorted from the building by a cop. What actually happened is that the sub left the room to take a 20-minute phone call and the kids thought it would be funny to flip the tables over. The substitute then had to flip the tables right side up while yelling at the kids. Then, during lunch, my special ed co-teacher came into my room to set up and caught the sub making out with a student. Turns out she was 18 to his 25 and the 20-minute phone call was to set up the lunch meeting. The principal then had him escorted from the building by the resource officer. This is why I say, having a sub is more work than just coming into school my damn self. Gave out snacks I bought with my own money that I kept for kids who stayed after to get tutoring. Threw out a broken electric pencil sharpener that kids broke in front of her, which again, I bought with my own money and couldn't get replaced by the company because I had no product to send back. I still don't have a sharpener for my room. Let the kids go through my things in my cabinets and desk. Lost a bunch of stuff that way. Asked a deaf kid to take off his hearing aids. Kids tried to tell her he needs to them, but to her they looked like headphones. She cried when was confronted by another teacher. When I was in 6th grade I fractured my wrist, but it was my dominant hand, so I had to poorly write with my right. Teacher forced me to write with my left while I had a cast. I couldn't even grasp the pencil. Cried a lot. Then a couple months go by and got my cast off. Sub told me to suck it up and write with my left hours. After getting my cast off, I felt like jelly and intense pain. Teacher was fired at the end of 7th grade because of unnecessary complaints. Accused a student of stealing something that the aide had put away. This was a class that contained some pretty rough students, including one suspended multiple times for fighting and some gang members. She decided to go after a sweet, petite girl that never caused trouble and was generally popular with her classmates. This set off the entire class, which is when the sub went ballistic and started wildly throwing accusations and yelling at said students. Security eventually got called and took several students out. My first clue was when the sub got my cell number from the staff directory and went off for 20+ minutes about how bad my students had been. This was followed up with an extremely long email and a 2-page written note on my desk, plus a concerned note from the administrator about not having appropriate sub plans. She didn't follow them in the first place and decided to throw me under the bus. The next morning, when I arrived at school, the students were waiting for me at the door. Once I got them calmed down enough to tell their side of the story, we had a discussion on how they could have handled the situation differently. I promised them never to get that sub again. On a related note, I had a good relationship with said rough children because I treated them with respect and fairness. They usually behaved for me. Left my perfectly prepped and neat desk an absolute disaster, did not follow the lesson plan, and took my gel pens. This happened to my colleague, but I was the classroom next door. My colleague was showing Clash of the Titans at the end of the year after a unit on ancient Greece. There is mild nudity at the beginning and the end of the movie, but they were in the middle of the movie so there shouldn't have been an issue. He left the video paused at the right spot. We still had VCRs like 10 years ago when this happened, but the sub somehow managed to show both the nudity at the beginning and the end of the movie. The nudity scenes were hours apart, and the class was only 40 minutes. Then, the sub wrote an email to the principal about how my colleague made him show nudity. There was a harpsichord in the front of the classroom used both for demonstration and performance. Not knowing what he was doing, the sub tried to tune 3 notes that had gone mildly out of tune while I was away. He managed to break the strings on all 3 notes and left a message inside reading, "Sorry about that." Didn't do anything to the kids, Paresi, but told the kids that the reason I was out was because my mom was having breast cancer surgery. I teach K5, and I specifically didn't tell the kids because I didn't want them to worry. So, when I came back, I had a bunch of kids come up to me asking about my mom, which was so sweet, but not something the kids should have had to worry about. Rearranged my room. Not in a move student A away from student B and put her by student C way. In a move the giant rug over to the opposite corner of the room and completely change the layout of student desks and rearrange a bookshelf way. Lost more than half of my textbooks that I purchased myself, as well as textbooks that were school property. Administration just shrugged at this until they found out the textbooks belonging to the school were around $120 each. Also lost all the book assignments of 4 classes I asked him to collect so I could correct those at home. Kinda sucked for the students who did put a lot of work on it and didn't have digital copies. Also didn't teach anything that I asked him to because he didn't really like the subject matter. Also didn't bother grading. When I checked the grades he had given out, there was only 1 grade and everyone was given 8/10, even students that didn't take my class. She let the kids run wild and do whatever they wanted. First graders. I was out because my dad died. Thank God my team realized what happened and all pulled together and cleaned the room / put it back together before I returned to work. Not a teacher, but the sub made the handicapped classmate who has muscle, joint and vision complications go grab his textbook from his home room. He's not completely helpless, but when it comes to heavy things, he needs help. Classmate's homeroom was halfway across campus and the required book consists of 5 large text volumes because they are specifically made for his poor vision. He can't wear glasses either due to complications. I offered to help because I'm usually the one that goes and grabs it for him during normal class, but the sub yelled at me saying he knows my kind and I'm just trying to get out of class. Sub told me he's not there to play games and for me to quit it before he sends me off to the principal's office. Needless to say the entire class was shocked. Classmate came back with another student from the homeroom requesting that next time the sub sends someone else to grab the books because my classmate can't carry it by himself. When my usual teacher came back we requested the sub not return because of what he said to us and did to classmate. My teacher wrote an email to the principal about it and that was the end of that. Had a substitute teacher in my high school French class show a movie that was straight up softcore xxography but tried to explain that since it was in French it was artistic. It was equally frustrating because while I wanted to see breasts, I also couldn't stop reading the subtitles because I had to understand what they were saying. The teacher did not come back the next day. Update. I went through all the comments and looked at everyone who suggested what movie it might be and none of those movies were the one shown. This would have been in 2006 and the movie looked maybe late 90s or early 2000s. If I come across it, I will update this thread, but for all I know it could have been as XXO in French. Not a teacher, but in 9th grade my algebra teacher had her baby early in the year, so she was gone till the last month or 2 months of the school year. The sub was a former teacher, so you'd think she'd be a great sub. Nope. She hyper-focused on 3 to 4 out of the 28 students in the class and just teach them, while completely ignoring the rest of us. She'd pass out a worksheet, then go to her students and never acknowledge us again till she dismissed us. Never checked homework, never acknowledged us. If anyone outside of her favorite students raised their hand or spoke up, they were ignored, etc. Which went about as well as you expected with a bunch of 14 to 15-year-olds. That class was just wild. The kids who actually stayed in the classroom anyway, it was a mess. I'm actually surprised we weren't reported or visited by the teachers on either side of us for how loud we were. After several months with this lady, the vice principal was walking around randomly checking classrooms and walked into our crap show algebra I class. He lost it, yelled at all of us to sit down and shut up, which she also didn't acknowledge. Demanded she leave and sat with us the rest of the period. Never saw her again and had maybe 6 to 7 different subs after her. 2 weeks after this, our regular teacher came back. When she realized we had learned nothing and learned the extent of how useless this lady had been, she started tearing up. I passed the classroom on the way to the bathroom during the next period and saw her sobbing at her desk. A friend of my mom's worked at the central office where they signed or organized the substitute teachers. That lady was permanently taken off the substitute list. That's it for now. Thank you for watching the video. Leave your comments below. See you soon.